Whoa! A blinding burst of light floods the surroundings, and within a split second, a series of events unfolds. Initially, your vehicle shuts down as an electromagnetic pulse races through at the speed of light, rendering all unprotected electronics useless. In the everyday world, that practically means everything. If the flash from the explosion didn't blind you, you'd witness sparks dancing along the high-voltage wires overhead, overloaded with energy. All those modern vehicles relying on fancy computers and electronic gadgets for efficiency and comfort are now nothing more than useless heaps of metal on four wheels. Personal computers, cell phones, even pacemakers, all abruptly shut down in a 40-mile radius, with no chance of ever turning back on. The power grid is utterly destroyed and will require a complete replacement, a task that will span years. Consider yourself fortunate if you were driving in the opposite direction of the detonation point, otherwise, you'd be facing it head-on.
Oh, thank God.
What just occurred about a mile above your city is the birth of a second sun that burns brilliantly for just a few milliseconds. That brief moment is enough to unleash billions of joules of energy, much of it in the visible wavelength, scorching the eyes of anyone who happened to glance in its general direction during detonation. Those within a 2 to 3 mile radius face permanent blindness, assuming they survive what's coming next. Anyone outside that area may experience blindness for varying durations, from hours to minutes, depending on their distance. Even those escaping permanent blindness will likely suffer some vision loss. While you're safely out of the immediate impact area, for others, ionizing radiation is tearing through their bodies from the detonation. Their DNA is completely unraveled as ionizing radiation rips through them, like millions of microscopic shotgun blasts, disintegrating the very instructions for life. Most people within half a mile will succumb immediately to radiation exposure, unless, of course, what happens in the next few seconds doesn't kill them first. Beyond that range, the effects of radiation poisoning diminish steeply. You were in your car, offering some protection from thermal radiation, but not entirely. Your arm was hanging out the window, and even at over 2 miles from the detonation point, your arm has suffered some pretty nasty second-degree burns. Fortunately, you're lucky because 35% of the energy from a nuclear explosion is released as heat. Anyone caught out in the open can suffer third-degree burns at a distance of even 5 miles. If third-degree burns cover 24% of the body, or second-degree burns cover 30% of the body, those individuals will go into serious shock with death imminent. All flammable materials directly under and surrounding the blast site catch fire due to the intense heat. Even at 2 miles out, some paint on your car evaporates, and the car door becomes painfully hot to the touch. Tires on vehicles all around you burst as the rubber softens and weakens, while billboards catch fire. People caught in the open are engulfed in flames as their clothes ignite while they're still wearing them. Some people lose their hair, literally seared off their heads, leaving behind painful second-degree burns across their scalp. All of this happens within just 1 second of a nuclear detonation. Your car spins out of control as the tires go flat, but you're lucky enough to come to an abrupt, mostly safe stop. Glancing in the rearview mirror, you have just enough time to brace yourself for what's coming next. Like an invisible tsunami, the pressure wave is now tearing across the landscape, originating from the detonation point and radiating outwards. This was a nuclear attack using an intercontinental ballistic missile, so the explosion occurred a few hundred meters above the city, allowing the pressure wave to expand outward unimpeded by terrain and buildings. A ground impact is highly unfavorable as it leads to buildings or terrain absorbing much of the pressure wave, significantly limiting the damage. Within a mile from the detonation point, the devastation is total. Buildings crumble, and tall skyscrapers are obliterated, leaving only the skeletal core of each structure protruding a few hundred feet like shattered, skeletal fingers. Numerous sewers, service tunnels, transportation tunnels, and subways that crisscross a modern city collapse, trapping hundreds with no hope of rescue. Beyond a mile, the damage persists but is less severe. Multi-story buildings suffer serious damage, leading many to collapse or lean against their neighbors. Buildings with only a few stories are less severely affected but lose every single window and witness roof collapses, resulting in casualties below. At least the tunnels and sewers that weave through the city are mostly safe from collapse, with only a few sustaining serious damage. Almost no human beings within 2 miles out survive if caught in the open. You're just over 2 miles from the detonation point, and here the damage lessens once again. Windows shatter, some roofs and walls collapse, but generally, buildings remain standing. As the pressure wave catches up to you, your car is physically lifted and tossed like an angry child playing with a Hot Wheels car. The pressure wave flips your car over, threatening to tip it, but you're just far enough away, and your car crashes back down onto all 4 wheels. Debris pelts the landscape around you, but you're mostly shielded inside your car. A few people standing on the street are struck by airborne chunks of concrete propelled by the 100-mile-an-hour wind. The roar of a second sun coming to life above your city has been deafening, temporarily robbing you of all hearing. It's likely to return in time, but those closer to the detonation could suffer permanent or severe hearing loss. A strange silence blankets the city 5 seconds after the detonation as a massive mushroom cloud slowly ascends into the sky. Then, the screaming begins, tens of thousands seriously injured, tens of thousands less so. Now you're on a ticking clock, having survived the initial explosion through sheer luck. However, surviving what comes next will demand skills, knowledge, and quick thinking. Tick-tock, 15 minutes before you're dead. What's currently unfolding and poised to claim more lives than the initial explosion is an ecological disaster about to envelop you and every survivor in your city. The detonation of a nuclear weapon above your city has scattered ionizing radiation across the landscape, penetrating the building materials of the city. The thermal flash and pressure wave pulverized all that irradiated material, turning it into very fine dust. Then, the incredible heat, reaching as much as the surface of the sun for a few milliseconds, creates massive convection currents that suck up enormous quantities of air and send it roaring upward into the sky, hence the mushroom cloud. Due to the intense heat, the air is saturated with billions of tons of highly radioactive dust, and in approximately 15 minutes, this dust is poised to start descending all around you. Panic sets in as you grasp the impending danger, but now you face a crucial decision. You could try to locate a functioning vehicle and escape the city, attempting to outrun the fallout cloud about to descend. Indeed, many people in the suburbs are currently hopping into their cars to do just that. However, you know better. Even if you found a working vehicle within the next minute, outrunning the fallout cloud looming overhead would be impossible. Propelled by upper atmospheric winds, the cloud will outpace anything except the fastest sports cars. Moreover, roads and highways will inevitably clog up with vehicles and others with the same escape plan. The particles in the stem of the mushroom cloud will ultimately fall right back to where they were picked up. Not many people will succumb to them, mainly because anyone under the growing thick, black, sooty stem of a massive mushroom cloud is likely already dead from the initial explosion. The real concern lies with the rest of the billowing cloud. This poses a threat not only to you but to many others, as a significant portion of the radioactive fallout will reach the uppermost layers of the atmosphere, carried along by strong winds. Massive plumes of radiation will descend for hundreds of miles from the detonation point, poisoning communities states away. This underscores why Russia's bravado about tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine is mere saber-rattling, as prevailing winds would redirect much of the fallout back into Russia. To evade the imminent danger in the next 15 minutes, you must make a choice. Surviving radiation poisoning boils down to 3 crucial factors: time, distance, and shielding. Spending more time away from a radiation source is safer, as radioactive decay, especially in fission byproducts of nuclear explosions, makes dangerous particles short-lived. Greater distance from an unshielded radioactive source means less radiation exposure. Shielding involves placing barriers between yourself and a radioactive source. If one of these requirements can't be met, you must compensate by increasing the other two. To survive a nuclear attack, you'll need to address all three factors. First, assess your surroundings. The worst choice is to stay in your vehicle. While this provides some shielding and distance from the fallout, the radioactive debris is only hazardous if extremely close to your body. Keeping all windows up and vents closed, sealing them with whatever is available, becomes crucial. The initial radioactive particles resemble grains of sand or salt, easy to keep out. However, finer radioactive debris will gradually descend, reaching as small as specks of dust. Detecting the presence of radioactive fallout after a nuclear explosion is possible by observing coatings of dust on objects. Although a car is a less than ideal survival choice, it's better than nothing. A superior option is to seek shelter inside a building, preferably with a basement. Despite fine debris settling in low places, choosing a basement with few entrances and sealing them is key. In modern cities, especially those lacking basements, move to the central area of a building and shelter in place. This adds distance and shielding between yourself and harmful fallout. To survive, precautions must be taken before the radioactive dust begins falling. If duct tape is available, immediately seal all windows and doors. While a closed window offers protection from larger debris, finer particles may still infiltrate, potentially posing a threat inside the shelter. That's why it's crucial to seal windows and doors with tape and position your shelter as far from any window as possible, ideally past several closed doors. Securing your shelter is the top priority, and fortunately, you found an intact office building to take refuge in along with a few other survivors. Working swiftly, you all seal off exterior windows and tape up the doors leading to your inner core. Now that you're somewhat safe, it's time for a peculiar yet essential task: getting naked. No, you're not repopulating the Earth already, but you are avoiding a very nasty death by radiation poisoning. If you were outside during the detonation, there's a serious risk that your clothing is contaminated with radioactive particle debris. Those who were outside when the bomb went off must immediately shed all outer garments, seal them in a plastic bag, and then double bag if possible. Store it far away from you, ensuring everyone is aware of its location. Simultaneously, you'll want to start wiping everyone down, utilizing the buddy system to reach those hard-to-reach spots. You'll be spending some time with your new companions, so why not break the ice by getting naked and giving each other a quick wipe down? The goal is to remove all exterior contamination from your body to prevent it from resting against your skin and causing damage with ionizing radiation. Simple soap and water can do the trick, or even just brushing off with a clean cloth. However, anything used for cleaning must go into another containment bag. Never reuse or reopen an old containment bag already filled with contaminated material. Now that you've averted the most imminent hazard, exterior contamination, the next significant threat, which will persist, is interior contamination. Finer radioactive debris can enter wounds, be breathed in, and settle in your lungs or along your esophagus. Inside your shelter, your odds of survival are good, but only if you stay in place. You've established distance and shielding, but now you need to add time to the equation. Fallout contamination decays rapidly, with 80% of its energy released in the first day. However, the debris remains energetic enough to be deadly even after one day. For every 7-fold factor of time, the dose rate decreases by a factor of 10. 2 hours after detonation, the fallout loses half of its energy, but this can still be extremely deadly. Ideally, you should shelter in place for a full 72 hours before leaving, as remaining radioactive debris will still be harmful if you're in contact with it for an extended period. Unfortunately, your city will be a nuclear landscape, and you'll be in constant contact with radioactive debris even after 3 days. Hence, the CDC recommends waiting a full 7 days before leaving your shelter, providing the best chances of survival. At this point, external contamination is unlikely to be a severe threat, but internal contamination remains a concern. Too weak to penetrate the skin, radioactive debris that lodges into wounds or inside your lungs can still be deadly or pose serious long-term health risks. When leaving your shelter, precautions against breathing in fine radioactive particles are essential. Face masks, similar to those worn during the coronavirus outbreak, are okay but not ideal. A better option is wetting a t-shirt or a large cloth, wrapping it over your mouth and nose. Keep it wet, as moisture attracts fine particles and traps them, covering both your nose and mouth. After any excursion, wash all protective equipment and exterior garments. If possible, give your body a thorough wash to remove any fine particles that could be accidentally inhaled or enter cuts or scrapes. Assuming you had food and water in your shelter, especially water, or your story would have ended. If you've managed to survive 7 days, you must now consider long-term survival. Firstly, evaluate whether it's best to stay put or seek help. If it was a small-scale attack, help from the military or emergency response agencies might be on its way. In the case of a full-scale nuclear conflict, you're likely on your own. If you believe help is coming, work on enhancing the resilience of your shelter. Improve exterior shielding by creating layers of plastic or cloth, like curtains, in front of exterior doors, minimizing the spread of radioactive dust as people move in or out. If possible, fashion suits out of garbage bags to wear over outer clothing, allowing easy removal and disposal after each trip. If water is available, set up 2 cleaning areas for boots, dipping them in buckets filled with water in succession. Pay extra attention to boots and feet, as they are most likely to be saturated with fine radioactive debris. Ensure your shelter is visible to search and rescue parties by creating large, bright geometric shapes that can immediately attract attention from helicopters or passing rescue vehicles. While SOS is a global sign of distress, you can find creative ways in a city to make it obvious that your shelter is occupied by survivors. Regularly clean your emergency displays to signal that people are still alive, otherwise, rescue workers may assume the shelter has been abandoned. Whether you move out or stay in place, finding food and water eventually will be necessary. Stick to sealed, non-permeable materials like plastic for anything you consume. Canned goods are excellent choices, being airtight, and even pastas or breads in sealed plastic wrapping are acceptable. Avoid opening any food items outside your shelter and wrap them in cloth or plastic during transport to protect them from outside dust. Dispose of wrapping material or tin cans that have been in unsecured areas exposed to outside dust. Securing water may be tricky due to the lack of electricity in the city. If you're fortunate enough to be in a safe interior location during an attack, plug up sinks and bathtubs and fill them with water while it's still flowing. Underground water pipes will remain safe from radioactive fallout for an extended period, but eventually, the body of water supplying them will be contaminated. That's why, even if you have running water after an attack, relying on it might not be the best strategy. It's better to stock up on water bottles, readily available in shopping centers and corner stores post-attack. Most water bottles are made of thick plastic, keeping the contents safe even after fallout has descended. However, as always, you'll need to decontaminate every bottle of water you bring into your shelter from the outside before using it. If finding water becomes challenging, your best option might be to start moving and get out of the city or head towards emergency services. Major airports are logical destinations as they are likely to be the focal point for initial rescue efforts. However, if reaching one proves difficult, or if government help isn't on the horizon, survival will hinge on leaving the city. It's helpful if you can determine the prevailing wind direction and then move perpendicular to it. Heading into the wind risks exposure to contaminated dust, so move perpendicular to escape the stream of air carrying radioactive waste, similar to avoiding a rip current. Once out of the city, your safest bet is to head towards high ground, particularly the leeward side of a mountain where the wind hasn't blown radioactive dust and debris onto the soil. Radioactive fallout tends to settle in low areas, and rains and streams wash it down mountains and into valleys and plains. Identifying major drinking water sources around your city and heading to those on high ground is a wise move. If you can find shelter in a safe area for a few months, radioactivity levels in the remaining debris should be manageable. Living a long, healthy life in the area of a nuclear attack may be out of the question, but a moderately long life with few serious health problems could be possible. Some radioactive elements remain deadly for years. For instance, strontium-90 and cesium-137 pose risks even after 10 years. If you can't escape the site of a nuclear attack or if your entire nation comes under nuclear attack, avoiding these dangers may be challenging, as these elements become part of the environment. However, there's a reason why both Hiroshima and Nagasaki are habitable today. Nuclear attacks from other nations are likely to be of the airburst variety. A ground-burst weapon explodes upon hitting the ground, limiting its destructive potential but causing massive plumes of irradiated material. On the other hand, an air-burst weapon explodes above its target, allowing the shockwave and thermal radiation to affect a wider area. Additionally, much of the weapon's radioactive output is propelled into the atmosphere or space. Within days of both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosions, people were inhabiting the ruins and living lives with few, if any, health effects. So, cheer up, because the end isn't the end after all. Now's the time to grab your trusty Pip-Boy and embark on the greatest Fallout LARP event the world has ever seen. Did you like this video? Let us know. Comment below and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.